Asteroid City is the latest film by director Wes Anderson. It stars Jason Schwartzman, Scarlett Johansson, Bryan Cranston, Tilda Swinton, Tom Hanks, and all the other usual suspects from a typical Wes Anderson production. Now, this is usually the part of the review where I go over the movie's plot, but to be honest, I'm not sure if I can adequately cover it efficiently, so I'll just read the IMDb summary. Following a writer on his world-famous fictional play about a grieving father who travels with his tech-obsessed family to small, rural Asteroid City to compete in a junior stargazing event, only to have his worldview disrupted forever. Now, I first discovered Wes Anderson back in 2012 when I watched Moonrise Kingdom. That is still my favorite of his filmography to this day, but it inspired me to look back at his other works. The traditional Wes Anderson style is one that the internet has parodied to death. I've even come across those horrid AI recreations from time to time. Film Twitter can be a scary place. When you're going into one of his movies, you know that you'll be getting dynamite performances and a stellar level of production value. What varies, however, is the story being told. And while most of the movies that he has done present a more focused narrative, Asteroid City is a different beast altogether. That's not to say that Wes Anderson hasn't played around with the structure of his past films, but this one is by far his most unconventional in terms of narrative presentation. There is a story being told, but not the one that the trailers are marketing. There are aliens involved, kinda, but that element is just one component of a larger thread being woven. The movie focuses more on a sort of documentary-style production about the play Asteroid City, in which the characters on screen are really played by actors who are themselves characters. Did I lose anyone yet? When the film is in this documentary-style narrative, it is presented in black and white with a 4:3 aspect ratio. When it switches to the Asteroid City narrative, took inspiration from those retro art-style paintings of the past. I was fully immersed in those sequences. I can also say that this movie is by far his most meta. As stated earlier, Wes Anderson has this well-defined style that has become distinct these days, but in Asteroid City, he seeks to deliberately draw attention to that style. This story feels like a hangout movie, one where the characters are stuck in one location having to deal with the philosophical questions posed by an event that challenges their previously held beliefs. While watching it, I couldn't help but think that Anderson was inspired by the events of the pandemic, and upon reading into the production, I found that I was right. Asteroid City taps into that existential dread that permeated the world at that time, and approaches it with that same deadpan style of the director's usual comedic tone. This approach works well in some areas, but not as well in others. And just to put my cards on the table, I find his quirky sense of humor for the most part hilarious, but I acknowledge that it can be grating at times, especially here when it involves heavy themes like death and grief. But for a movie so caught up in trying to delve into the ideas of humanity, I have to admit I wasn't able to connect to the humanity of the characters on screen. I failed to become emotionally invested in anyone on screen as much as I would have liked, and I found greater enjoyment in its technical aspects. It's Wes Anderson at his most abstract, which I know will turn a lot of people off. In fact, the story's emotional climax is told in a rather unconventional manner, again, playing around with that unusual structure I spoke about earlier. For me personally, it works better as an experiment than it does as a narrative. And of course, it goes without saying that the performances are stellar across the board. Scarlett Johansson is great, Tom Hanks is fantastic, and the younger cast members are also terrific. Jake Ryan and Grace Edwards are wonderful discoveries, and I hope to see them in more things to come. But at the end of the day, this is really Jason Schwartzman's movie from beginning to end, and it was great to see him in a leading role again. By the way, if you haven't watched the HBO show Bored to Death, I highly recommend it. So, overall, I found that I enjoyed Asteroid City. It's not my favorite of Wes Anderson's filmography by any means, and if you dislike his style already, then you'll probably hate it. There isn't any new ground being broken here with this filmmaking to really change your mind about it. But I still found great pleasure in its presentation, performances, and the discussion of some of its ideas. I don't think that all the concepts are as well developed as they could have been, but I appreciated the experiment nevertheless. I'm going to give Asteroid City a B-.